Hello and welcome to Overbooked Booktalks. I am Kari. I work at the Mount Airy Branch Library, which is part of Carroll County Public Library. And here at Overbooked Booktalks, I like to discuss some books I have recently read and really enjoyed that I think would make really great discussion books. So whether you're reading these books on your own and you want to further discuss them here, or if you're sharing them with your book club or just one or two other friends, you can do that and they really make for great discussion. So today the book I'm introducing you to is titled Gingerbread. It's a novel, as you can see, by Helen Oyeyemi. And I'll read the inside flap to you really quickly, and that'll give you an idea kind of what the story's about. And then I'll give you some of my reflections on the book and some good talking points if you're going to read it and discuss it with some friends. So, Perdita Lee may appear your average British schoolgirl. Her mother, Harriet Lee, may seem just like a working mother trying to penetrate the school social hierarchy. But there are signs that they may not be as normal as they think they are. For one thing, they share their gold-painted 7th floor walk-up apartment with some surprisingly verbal vegetation. And then there's the gingerbread they bake. Londoners may find themselves able to take or leave it, but it's very popular in Druhastrana, the faraway, or according to some sources non-existent, land of Harriet Lee's early youth. The world's truest lover of the Lee family gingerbread, however, is Harriet's charismatic childhood friend, Gretel, a figure who seems to have had a hand in everything, good or bad, that has happened to Harriet since they met. Decades later, teenage Perdita's search for her mother's long-lost friend prompts a new telling of Harriet's story. As the book follows the Lees through encounters with jealousy, ambition, family grudges, work, wealth, and real estate, gingerbread seems to be the one thing that reliably holds a constant value. So there's just a really quick, brief overview. You can tell that it's a story that has been inspired by Hansel and Gretel's classic fairy tale story with the gingerbread. Helen Oyeyemi, if you haven't read any of her books previously, like I had not, she has several novels. Her most recent one before this was Boy Snow Bird, which is another fantastic book that I now am going to read as well. She also has a collection of short stories called What Is Not Yours Is Not Yours. But like I said, she's a young British author. Her voice is really refreshing, I thought, and really interesting. So I know some of the book reviews on this book have called it genre bending or defying any particular genre. I do think that it is definitely like a solid, like magical realism / fantasy type of book. What I wasn't expecting was that it would be so entirely creative and interesting and just really a fascinating story. So what I was expecting, one of the reasons I chose gingerbread for this month, as the weather gets cooler, I always like to kind of curl up. I love classic fairy tales and fairy tale retellings. I think, even though some of them aren't that creative with either having like a contemporary version or a twisted fairy tale kind of take on classic fairy tales, but I still enjoy reading them. I think they're nice, quick reads and really just enjoyable. Gingerbread, however, was completely different than what I was thinking as far as that. It's as if the author has taken this seed of these like classically European, German fairy tales and planted them as a background, but then kind of grown this entirely different, creative, interesting, fascinating, twisty, turny story that's very unpredictable into her storytelling. So, and she really draws the reader in. So rather than experiencing a story as almost as a storyteller telling you classically, this one really makes you delve into the story because you're trying to follow along and put the pieces together. And it's a little disorienting as far as the book goes. It's not a very long book. You know, I like to pick shorter books, especially for discussion for book clubs. So it comes in right over, barely over 250 pages. So it's not a super long read. It did take me a little bit longer to read, though, because the details are so intricate and so out of this world makes it sound more of a sci-fi, which it's not. But she really creates this entirely new world like a sci-fi would. But it's just really, really interesting. And it's another one of those things, like I said, it's been described as genre bending. You know, it's hard to tell if this is necessarily a character-driven story or a plot-driven. I want to say characters-driven story because you get to know the characters so very well, and there are a lot of them that you kind of piece together through this retelling of the character's mother's childhood and how they came to be at the place where they are in England, and this country that is very hard to get in and out of and isn't on any maps that are available throughout the rest of the world, but also this seeming hierarchy that's going on within this possibly fantasy world, possibly real country that's just not recognized on a map, the hierarchy that really runs the world. So there's a little bit of, or I should say a lot of metaphors for class and society in this, but they're just so cleverly put into the book. And it's not a heavy book at all. It's a little humorous. I wouldn't call it, you know, strictly humor, but there's a lightness to the storytelling. And it doesn't seem dark or scary or anything like that. It's just really, really interesting. And really behind all of it is, you know, these really, really human characters. So, and their characteristics, like even though there's all of this mystery and fantasy woven in and storytelling, you know, the mom, Harriet, really is just trying to get an in with the PTA parents. Like that's really her goal when the story starts, is for her daughter to have kind of a normal upbringing and a normal life and a normal social life, and for her to try to get an in with these families, these school families at her daughter's new school. But it's so insightful. Even there, something seemingly innocuous, the author really puts a lot of time and effort into describing and delving deeper into those stories. So I cannot recommend Gingerbread highly enough. I think it's fascinating. Like I said, it's not a long read, but it takes a little bit longer because it is a little bit disorienting. And I know that's not everybody's cup of tea, but I would really, really encourage you, you know, and it's one of those books that if you're not feeling it at the beginning, like try your best to stick through it through the end. You know, it's not going to be so confusing. You know, everything, you can kind of put the pieces together, but there are some unanswered questions as well, which is something that I think makes a really great discussion book. A lot of things that if you're discussing it with somebody else, they might mention that you didn't pick up on, and you might mention that they didn't pick up on. So again, I highly encourage you to read Gingerbread and share it with your friends. Check out the author Helen Oyeyemi's other titles as well. I think she's an amazing new voice in literature and one that we'll be reading for a very long time. So I hope that you enjoyed this talk and join me next month for another Overbooked Book Talk.